Hello, this is video lecture number 57. Today we are talking about immigrants, East and West. Our subsections today are Newcomers from Europe and Asian Americans and Exclusion. So the United States has been called a nation of immigrants, and rightfully so. It's relatively small, if significant, Native American population notwithstanding. In the 19th century and up through the First World War, immigrants came from all over the world, but chiefly from Western and Northern Europe, and increasingly from Eastern and Southern Europe. Each new wave of immigrants had experiences similar to previous waves. At the same time, the character of these experiences changed, as America changed from being a largely rural and agricultural nation to being an industrial and urban one. So today is Immigrants, East and West. Let's look at our first subsection, Newcomers from Europe. Between the Civil War and World War I, 25 million immigrants entered the United States. They began to make the American working class truly global. It now included not only people of African and Western European descent, but also Southern and Eastern Europeans, Mexicans, and Asians. In 1900, census takers found that over 75% of all residents of San Francisco and New York City had at least one parent who was foreign-born. For the new industrial order, immigrants made an ideal labor supply. They took the worst jobs at the lowest pay. During economic downturns, many left the labor market and returned to their home countries, reducing the shock of unemployment within the United States. Mass migration from Western Europe had started in the 1840s when over 1 million Irish fled a terrible famine in their own country. In the following decades, as European populations grew rapidly and agriculture became commercialized, peasant economies suffered, first in Germany and Scandinavia, and then across Austria-Hungary, Russia, Italy, and the Balkans. This upheaval displaced millions of rural people. Along with Italians and Greeks, Eastern European Jews were among the most numerous arrivals. The first American Jews, who numbered around 50,000 in 1880, were mostly of German Jewish descent. They had prospered in the United States. In the next 4 decades, over 3 million poverty-stricken Jews arrived from Russia, the Ukraine, Poland, and other parts of Eastern Europe, transforming the Jewish presence in the United States. So let's have a look at our next section then, Asian Americans and Exclusion. Americans were not as lenient towards newcomers from Asia. The first Chinese immigrants had arrived in the United States in the 1840s during the California Gold Rush. After the Civil War, the Burlingame Treaty between the United States and China opened the way for increasing numbers to emigrate. Fleeing poverty and upheaval in southern China, they, like European immigrants, filled low-wage niches in the American labor market. Facing intense political pressure, lawmakers shut out Chinese immigrants. In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which specifically barred Chinese laborers from entering the United States. Nonetheless, well into the 20th century, Chinese immigrants, as opposed to native-born Chinese Americans, could not apply for citizenship. Other would-be immigrants, known as paper sons, relied on Chinese residents in the United States who generated documents falsely claiming the newcomers as their children. So by the turn of the century, Korean and Japanese immigrants also began to arrive. 8,000 Koreans came by 1920. By 1909, 40,000 Japanese worked in agriculture, 10,000 on railroads, and 4,000 in canneries. Okay, so that's it for this section. This is a brief introduction to the wave of immigrants that came to the United States in the early part of the 20th century, later part of the 19th, and it really sets the stage for the rest of the 20th century, and it shapes our country today. So again, this is just a first introduction, a brief look at the numbers and types of people that were coming into the United States. So at this time, have a look at the review questions and answer them, please, and continue on with your notes.